And then finally, I think that from the last year, the one thing I've tried to put a priority on since I left the White House was getting some exercise in. I think that there's a good probability that my generation is, hopefully with the advances in science, either the first generation to live forever or the last generation that's going to die. And so we need to keep ourselves in pretty good shape. And then the other thing
The United States is prepared to support a peace agreement in every way that we can. We believe that it is possible for both sides to gain more than they give so that all people can live in peace, safe from danger, free from fear, and able to pursue their dreams. The United States recognizes the sensitivity surrounding Jerusalem, a city that means so much to so many. Jerusalem is a city unique in the history of civilization. No other place on earth can claim significance to three major religions. Each day, Jews pray at the Western Wall, Muslims bow in prayer at Al-Aqsa Mosque, and Christians worship at the Church of the Holy Sepulchre. That is why President Trump has called many times, including right now, on all parties to maintain the status quo at Jerusalem's holy sites, including the Temple Mount, also known as Haram al-Sharif. While the challenges to peace are numerous, I have personally seen that the determination of the leaders in the region and throughout the world remains steadfast. Jerusalem must remain a city that brings people of all faiths together, to visit, to worship, to respect each other, and to appreciate the majesty of history and the glory of God's creation. Israel has been a responsible custodian of Jerusalem and has kept these religious sites open to all.
A company owned by President Trump's senior advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, will receive more than $400 million from a Chinese firm if the deal goes through, in a real estate deal that many experts are calling unusually favorable. The payout from the Arbang Insurance Group is part of a $4 billion deal at Kushner's Manhattan office tower at 666 Fifth Avenue. Bloomberg reports Arbang has links to the Chinese power structure and that past investments by the company in New York real estate have drawn federal review. Lawrence Noble of the Campaign Legal Center said of the deal, quote, "At the very least, this raises serious questions about the appearance of a conflict that arises from the possibility that the Kushners are getting a sweetheart deal. A classic way you influence people is by financially helping their family," he wrote.
Kushner is a guy with a Twitter account, but no tweets, a cover story in Time with no interview. He once tiptoed past his wife as she was being interviewed.
Oh, come on, Jared. Come on. Come on, Jared. Oh, Jared, you can't just walk in and not say anything.
He used to.
The silent sidekick has finally found his voice.
It's working, and it's very exciting.
But Jared Kushner, who is now, perhaps the single most influential aide when you watch Trump on TV, Jared Kushner is almost always by his side. He's involved in seemingly everything.
He's, of course, married to Ivanka Trump.
Right. So Donald Trump's son-in-law, he was previously CEO of Kushner Companies, his family company that, is a multi-billion-dollar company, owns tons of real estate. He has stakes in other kinds of businesses. And typically government officials divest from their businesses, sell them off so they don't have conflicts of interest. But in the case of Kushner, he's actually keeping parts of his family real estate empire.
666 Fifth Avenue, a prime piece of New York City's skyline, just 6 blocks from Central Park. Jared Kushner decided to make it his trophy in 2007.
This was the deal that put Jared on the map.
As you point out, this deal involving this Chinese company Anbang and this large office tower in Midtown Manhattan, which Jared Kushner has divested from, but the family still owns it. So,
it's going to be one of the biggest real estate deals in history in the city.
Right. According to this deal sheet that Bloomberg obtained, I believe it values this one office building at over $2 billion, which is the highest amount ever.
And they paid something like $1 billion for
it in 2007? They paid about, I believe, 1.8 at I think the top of the market, and then it went through. There's been a sort of complicated series of transactions with this particular building.
In December of last year, President Trump announced to the world that the United States would finally recognize the truth, that Jerusalem is the capital of Israel. He also declared that we would soon move our embassy from Tel Aviv to Jerusalem, and just 5 months later, we are standing on these grounds. While presidents before him have backed down from their pledge to move the American embassy once in office, this president delivered. Because when President Trump makes a promise, he keeps it. But today also demonstrates American leadership. By moving our embassy to Jerusalem, we have shown the world once again that the United States can be trusted. We stand with our friends and our allies, and above all else, we've shown that the United States of America will do what's right, and so we have. Israel is a sovereign nation with the right to determine its own capital, the same right that is enjoyed by every other country in the world. In taking this action, the United States has also chosen to strengthen the bond between our two countries. Our special bond is the envy of nations throughout the world. This bond is forged through shared history, sustained through shared interests, and immortalized through shared principles. The United States stands with Israel because we both believe in freedom.
And we rarely get to see Jared Kushner in public. It is not common for he or his wife Ivanka Trump to make themselves available to the media unless it is a carefully staged interview. So when I saw both Jared and Ivanka getting on the plane in Washington, D.C., escorted by Secret Service, I thought to myself, now is as good a time as any to get the reaction from Jared Kushner on his response to these Saudi denials that they had anything to do with the suspected death of Jamal Khashoggi. I did not, as you see, get an answer to that question.
And do we know, Errol, what they were doing on that flight heading to New York?
Well, it's not uncommon for Jared and Ivanka Trump to make their way back to New York, where they have a home and are more comfortable. One thing that we've noted in Washington is that anytime very negative headlines seem to be swirling around the White House, conveniently, Ivanka Trump and Jared Kushner are out of town and are seen kind of in other places. But what's key about Jared Kushner and his thinking is that he has been a major proponent of forging ties with Saudi Arabia. Jared Kushner, early on in the Trump administration, went to Riyadh to meet with officials. He laid the groundwork for the first major overseas trip of President Trump when he went to Saudi Arabia on a swing through the region, and was a major player as far as setting up the $110 billion arms deal with Saudi Arabia, which is now under threat because of the suspected actions of the royal family against Jamal Khashoggi. So he is a key figure within the administration and an important individual when it comes to understanding the president's thinking, especially at this time.
When we stand together for the principles and the values we share, we shine a light of justice unto the world. Israel proves every day the boundless power of freedom. This land is the only land in the Middle East in which Jews, Muslims, and Christians, and people of all faiths participate and worship freely according to their beliefs. Israel protects women's rights, freedom of speech, and the right of every individual to reach their God-given potential. These are the same values that the United States cherishes. These are the values that bind us together. These are also the values that have made Israel one of the most vibrant nations in the world. This tiny population has spurred advancements in technology, medicine, and agriculture, making the world a healthier, safer, and more prosperous place. These are the blessings we hope Israel can one day share with its neighbors. Last week, President Trump acknowledged another truth and kept another promise. He announced his intention to exit the dangerous, flawed, and one-sided Iran deal. Iran's aggression threatens the many peace-loving citizens throughout the region and the entire world. From Israel to Jordan to Egypt to Saudi Arabia and beyond, many leaders are fighting to modernize their countries and create better lives for their people. In confronting common threats and in pursuit of common interests, previously unimaginable opportunities and alliances are emerging. As Israel turns 70, the search for a lasting peace turns over a new leaf, one of realism and of not being afraid to stand strongly with our allies for what is good, for what is right, and for what is true. When there is peace in this region, we will look back upon this day and remember that the journey to peace started with a strong America recognizing the truth. The pursuit of peace is the noblest pursuit of humankind. I believe peace is within reach if we dare to believe that the future can be different from the past, that we are not condemned to relive history, and that the way things were is not how they must forever be.
In light of the attack, the Abraham Accords are more important than ever. Clearly, this is one of the hardest problem sets that's existed probably in geopolitics, but the end state has to look something like this, and it has to have two elements. Number one, Israel has to have the security to not be threatened by its neighbors and to be able to protect its citizens. That is absolutely crucial, is non-negotiable, and I do think a lot of the world agrees that that's something that should exist. The second element is that the Palestinian people have to have the opportunity to live a better life. And I think that if you go through the element, it's not just saying let's create a state, it has to be a state that can function and thrive, because if you don't create that, then the people will, again, find ways to blame other people instead of the leadership that's putting it there.
But here's the big picture. I think what Trump is signaling is that this is part of what he sees as the realignment, sort of the new world order, to use an overused term, that he's telling people that his relationship, our relationship as a country, is going to be closer with the Gulf states going forward than it has been ever before. And that probably comes at the price of our relationship with, say, continental Europe, that the future is in Dubai, the future is in Riyadh, the future is in Doha, the future is not in Frankfurt or in Paris.
Look, in his speech this week, Trump insisted that he is a peacemaker and a unifier. He's talking up this potential nuclear deal with Iran. Do you believe he can be the person to finally bring some peace to the region?
I believe it is God's job to sit in judgment, my job to defend America and to promote the fundamental interest of stability, prosperity, and peace. That's what I really want to do.
President Trump revealing the part that faith plays in his governing style, both during that trip to the Middle East this week and informing his America First policy more broadly. Very interesting.
But now Trump's personal fortune has grown by over $3 billion since taking office, much of it thanks to Gulf states. Just 6 months after leaving office after Trump's first term, Jared Kushner, his son-in-law, his brand new, no experience private equity firm, Affinity Partners, got a $2 billion investment from the Saudi Public Investment Fund, whose board thought that it was a really bad idea, but the fund is controlled by the Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman, who's buddies with Kushner. The New York Times reported that analyses deemed Kushner's firm unsatisfactory in all aspects. Unsatisfactory in all aspects. $2 billion. Which is a sign that perhaps this wasn't about business. It was about buying access.
Also notable this week was where Trump didn't go, Israel. The Trump administration's now engaging more directly with one-time adversaries.
This accord will enable us to continue to stand by the Palestinian people and realize their hopes for an independent state within a stable and prosperous region. This accord builds upon previous peace agreements signed by Arab nations with the State of Israel. The aim of all these treaties is to work towards stability and sustainable development.
So those historic remarks at the Abraham Accords signing ceremony at the White House, September 2020.
Is this beautiful?
As Trump toured the Sheikh Zayed Grand Mosque, one of the largest in the world, he removed his shoes as is customary. To facilitate his visit, The mosque was closed to the public for the first time ever in its history. But Trump hopes to make history with the deals he brings back to the United States.
A big day here today with the president's visit. What does it mean for this country, for the region, and where you see things?
It's definitely a historical day for us, for our relationship. The President Trump and America has been so great to the UAE in supporting this relationship, taking it even further ahead. We are a very welcoming nation like yours. People are free to do whatever they like and practice religion the way they see appropriate. Churches, mosques, synagogues, Hindu temples, you name it.
What this trip has done, which is so important, is that it has underscored every single day the fact that the Gulf states want a very different world, one marked by regional stability and economic prosperity. So in a way, Trump has really boxed in the Iranians even more on their own turf, in their own region, by cutting deals that Iran could only dream of. Iran will be surrounded by neighbors that are AI superpowers.
That's right.
The best AI activity in terms of infrastructure in the world will now be in the Middle East with U.S. companies and U.S. government involvement. The Iranians must be thinking, is enriching uranium really worth all of this?
We're looking at Gaza, and we got to get that taken care of. A lot of people are starving. There's a lot of bad things going on.
Still, one of the biggest surprises this week was the shift in U.S. policy on Syria. After a decade of isolation, Trump not only dropped U.S. sanctions on Syria, but he also met with the country's new president. It's a geopolitical shakeup as the U.S. president explores his own brand of economic diplomacy.
Let me pick up, if I can, on something that you noted, and that is President Trump's familiarity and his affinity for these Gulf leaders, for monarchs, because the Wall Street Journal has a piece about just that, and contrasting it with his at times strained relationships with traditional U.S. allies, namely European allies. The headline of this piece is he calls them handsome, attractive, tough. Trump's romance with Arab leaders, and it lists some of the praise that he's thrown at Crown Prince Mohammed bin Salman. I like you too much. To the Syrian president, he described as attractive and tough, and to Mohammed bin Zayed, the president of the UAE, he said, "You're a magnificent man." And that really reminded me of the conversation that Steve Witkoff had with Tucker Carlson a few weeks ago, where he basically suggested that the Gulf was the future of investment, AI, all that we're seeing now, all these deals taking place, whereas he described Europe as dysfunctional and dying. What does this signal to you about the president's view on the world and his foreign policy priorities?
Well, part of it is that Trump is a businessman and he loves the idea of these very, very rich countries, but really very, very rich families. These are, essentially families that own the countries. He said at the Gulf, essentially, my foreign policy doctrine is I don't believe in interfering in the internal affairs of other countries. And he's saying this to a bunch of absolute monarchies who are loving hearing that. Of course, he does constantly intervene in the internal affairs of countries. He's constantly telling the British how they should be handling free speech issues. The Vice President Vance is telling the Germans that they should be recognizing the AfD and incorporating it in coalitions. He's telling the Canadians what to do. So actually, Trump believes in lots of interference, almost all in democracies, and in non-interference in autocracies.
Our correspondent Zaina Khudr is following the summit from Baghdad, and that urgency in the Egyptian President Abdel Fattah al-Sisi's address, it's something that we have heard from most of the leaders so far, Zaina, as the situation in Gaza only deteriorates.
Yes, this year's annual League summit coinciding with Israel launching a new major military offensive on Gaza, a war that has been really raging for more than a year. Just yesterday, 24 hours before the summit was held, Trump reiterated this proposal. So there's really a lot of concern about the fate of the Palestinian people. There's also another message, and it's that in previous summits there was a lot of normalization of relations. A very divisive issue in this region was on the table. Now it is off the table. Arab leaders are hoping to use this as some sort of leverage, that there will be no further normalizing of ties with Israel unless Israel is committed to Palestinian statehood. But the reality is Israel is committed to continuing this war. It has said so in so many words. Its actions also, speak for themselves. This military intensification of the conflict. Now, Arab leaders, yes, many will argue that they do have, ways that they could use leverage over Israel and that it requires political will. But the bottom line is this. Many of them hoped that during the U.S. president's visit to the region this week, that some sort of a ceasefire would have been reached. It did not happen. And many will argue, unless you have the U.S. administration on board to end this war, allow aid to get in and improve, the desperate situation of Palestinians inside Gaza, nothing will change.
This is 666 Fifth Avenue, just blocks away from MSNBC's headquarters in New York. An aging 41-floor skyscraper that Trump's son-in-law and top advisor, Jared Kushner, bought in 2007 for $1.8 billion. Now, experts said he overpaid, and that was before the Great Recession dropped the property's value by a lot.
Jared Kushner, his big pet project was that 666 Fifth Avenue, that big office tower. He's going to tear it down, build something new.
It's notably, it's a nice skyscraper and a name that, or an address that is as memorable, we should say. They had big plans for it. At one point, they were talking about demolishing it and doubling it in size. And as you say, this was Jared Kushner's really ambitious project. It did not go the way that they thought it would.
Presidential family member and White House aide Jared Kushner broke his silence today in his first extended TV interview since Trump was elected. A 43-minute discussion that was often boastful, sometimes defensive, and at several points, honestly, bizarre. Now, for context, before I break this down, here are some of the questions Kushner was presented with.
How did you get this job? I mean, it's like you have like the dopest job in the world, like the secretary of everything. Did it bug you when they call it secretary of everything? Are you having fun? Because all we hear about is the chaos and the destruction. And
as President Donald Trump prepares for his first major foreign trip next week to the Middle East, his administration is privately turning to a familiar face for help navigating the region. Jared Kushner. Now, the president's son-in-law was a chief Middle East negotiator during the president's first term. And now we're learning that he's informally advising some of the president's top administration officials, people like Steve Witkoff, on help with navigating how to talk to these Arab leaders. Now, one of the key goals for the president next week is to return home with economic agreements from Saudi Arabia, Qatar, and the United Arab Emirates. But we're also learning that one of the more quiet, private goals that they're plotting behind the scenes is to try and expand on the Abraham Accords. The Abraham Accords was hammered out during the president's first term that essentially normalized diplomatic relationships between Israel and a number of Arab nations. Now, all of this comes as Jared Kushner does not want, we're told, a formal role in the Trump administration. Instead, he prefers to operate more behind the scenes in a quiet role.
I don't make a lot of noise. Noise is sometimes made about me, but I try to keep my head down.
Now, Jared Kushner is powerful but rarely heard, so it is revealing to hear his own assessment of his work so far, whether you agree with it or not. So here is how Kushner grades himself on the assignment of achieving peace in the Middle East.
The president asked me to do the Middle East peace process, which is something that I think we've made a lot of progress on. I'm as optimistic as you can be about that. I was given the Middle East peace process between the Israelis and the Palestinians, and I've dealt with a lot of the other regional partners in that effort.
In light of the attack, the Abraham Accords are more important than ever. Clearly, this is one of the hardest problem sets that's existed probably in geopolitics, but the end state has to look something like this, and it has to have two elements. Number one, Israel has to have the security to not be threatened by its neighbors and to be able to protect its citizens. That is absolutely crucial, is non-negotiable, and I do think a lot of the world agrees that that's something that should exist. The second element is that the Palestinian people have to have the opportunity to live a better life. And I think that if you go through the element, it's not just saying let's create a state, it has to be a state that can function and thrive, because if you don't create that, then the people will, again, find ways to blame other people instead of the leadership that's putting it there.
Can I get the mic? Mr. Jared, welcome to the UAE. How does this peace accord support peace and throughout the region? And my second question is, how did it feel to you personally? How did it feel to you?
That was Jared Kushner speaking with Harvard University's Middle East Initiative last year, and his comments were strikingly similar to what we heard from President Trump Tuesday about the U.S. taking over and rebuilding Gaza. Kushner is, of course, the president's son-in-law who took a leading role on Middle East policy during the first Trump administration.
If you are a single-issue voter on the question of the candidates having family members who trade on their name and influence to make lucrative foreign deals with governments that have adversarial relationships to the U.S., forget about Hunter Biden. That's piker stuff. Republicans have found nothing on him anyway. Your number one concern right now should be Donald Trump's son-in-law, Jared Kushner. A new deep dive on Kushner's foreign wealth investment firm in the New York Times covers the old classics like Jared's ties to the Chinese ambassador and a friendship with Mohammed bin Salman, the Saudi crown prince, who later gave Jared's investment firm $2 billion against the advice of his own finance experts, like the board that reviews investments for the Saudi sovereign wealth fund. The Times goes further than that to show that as a once and possibly future Trump administration official, Jared Kushner is open for business everywhere. In total, 99% of the money placed with him by investors has come from foreign sources.
The president's senior advisor and son-in-law, Jared Kushner, played a key role brokering this agreement. He joins us now from the North Lawn of the White House. Good morning, Jared. Thanks for joining us this morning. Thank you, George. This agreement has the potential to be a truly transformational event in the Middle East. Even experts who've been critical of President Trump in the past, like Tom Friedman, call it a major breakthrough. So can you explain, what does it mean for U.S. national security? Why is it happening now?
Yes, thank you, George. Great to be with you. So this is the first peace agreement that happened in the Middle East in the last 26 years. This is between Israel and the United Arab Emirates. Then just last week, President Trump announced the second peace agreement that he was able to broker in 29 days. So we have two peace agreements being signed today at the White House between Israel and Arab countries. This really signals the end, we believe, of the Arab-Israeli conflict. There's still a lot more work to do, but for 70 years in the region, you've had the Arab countries not wanting to interact with Israel in a substantive way. This has led to a lot of people using hatred to do extremism, which has led to terrorism all throughout. And America over the last 20 years has been very, very distracted with the Middle East. We've had hundreds of thousands of troops that have been through the Middle East. We've obviously had a lot of terror, that we've had threats coming to America. So bringing peace to that region allows us to focus more here domestically and create less risk to America, and obviously bring our troops home, which is something that President Trump's been doing.
It has not ended the conflict between the Israel and the Palestinians. The Palestinians calling this a betrayal. Are there hopes for a state now dead?
No, look, I think that there's a lot of posture, right? In deals, everyone's at no until they're at yes, and I think what you're seeing is tremendous movement.
666 Fifth Avenue, a prime piece of New York City's skyline, just 6 blocks from Central Park. Jared Kushner decided to make it his trophy in 2007.
This was the deal that put Jared on the map. I think every dynasty wants to own a piece of Manhattan.
To get the seller's attention, Kushner offered a big price, $1.8 billion, a record at the time. And the 26-year-old CEO of Kushner Companies borrowed aggressively to get the deal done.
You said that it was who they partnered. What went wrong here? Is it a function of the industry? Is it a function of mismanagement?
It's somewhat all of the above. I mean, they bought it at a very high price.
Yeah.
They went way too ambitious in terms of their plans with it, and then they just couldn't manage the finances of it. And it'll be interesting to see what Brookfield does with it.
Well, that's right, because people who know this building say it's not that easy to renovate this building. For example, it has low ceilings, and you can't fix that very easily. So it will be interesting to see how Brookfield really redoes that building and makes it profitable.
And just as a reminder, Brookfield is one of the probably least appreciated and most powerful investment firms in the entire world. You know, we talk a lot about Blackstone. Brookfield is right there as a real estate manager. Bruce Flatt, the CEO, is incredibly powerful, incredibly influential, and little known.
2-liter J for the real world, wide hood star. I'm showing you a video I put up several months ago that was called Trump Will Usher in the 7 Noahide Laws, or the One World Religion. Now, a lot of people didn't like that because Trump was here to save the world. Remember, Trump was not one of them. Trump isn't one of the elite. Trump is for people like us. Well, I'd like to think that maybe, perhaps, somehow people have started to wrap their heads around this, that Trump is nothing more than what Obama was to Bush and what Bush was to the guy before him and to the guy before him and so on and so forth and blah, blah, blah. Because that's exactly what they do. But Trump is a little bit more dangerous than the other guys because things like this, ushering in the Noahide laws, are completely for Trump's son, his son-in-law, Kushner. What is he? He's a dual citizen, right? He's completely, totally down for this is what these guys do. They're pushing the Israeli agenda, and these are not the Israelites. These are sound the same, completely different. This is a book right here, written by President Donald Trump, The Way to the Top, Trump. You can buy this ebook for $11.99 or $9.11 backwards, but don't let that get in your way, right? Let's look at a few things. 4 people have given me sound nuggets of wisdom that have helped me keep my business in perspective. When I was 19, I complained to David Geffen about some other people and blah, blah, blah. David turned to me and said, "You don't need to be a racehorse, blah, blah, blah." But look at this. One day, when my Kabbalah teacher, Eitan Yardini, asked how I was doing, I told him I needed a break. I was thoroughly exhausted, overwhelmed, and overworked. His Kabbalah teacher, that's Ben right out there. Where was that when he was vetted? Where was that when people were talking about it? Who was telling you about this crap?
Lily.
Exactly.
Ivanka.
Hey, Jared.
How are you?
Great.
Good to see you. You are a vision. Thank you both for coming.
Pleasure to be here.
My father-in-law is not an anti-Semite. That is how Jared Kushner opened a letter to the public about his father-in-law, Donald Trump, who's received a flood of criticism for a tweet that showed Hillary Clinton in front of a pile of money and what looked like a Star of David. Kushner went into his family's background with the Holocaust to argue there's a difference between actual dangerous intolerance and what he called accusations of racism to score political points. Ultimately, Kushner's main argument was he knows Trump while the media doesn't. He was partly addressing Dana Schwartz, a journalist at the newspaper Kushner owns. In her open letter published the day before Kushner's, Schwartz noted Trump edited his tweet, replacing the star with a circle, but he also added the hashtag America First, which was the name of a movement led by white supremacist Charles Lindbergh during World War II. Trump's original tweet was actually a repost. The meme with the star was published beforehand on a neo-Nazi internet message board. Kushner argued his father-in-law has staff who tweet for him, and while they might have been careless, they don't poll test every statement Trump makes. For her part, Schwartz says she doesn't believe Trump is anti-Semitic. The problem for her is Trump didn't condemn those who are. Instead, he condemned the media. Trump said Wednesday deleting the alleged Star of David tweet was a mistake and called those who were offended by it sick. For Newsy, I'm Ryan Beek.
Jared Kushner, his big pet project was that 666 Fifth Avenue, that big office tower. He's going to tear it down, build something new, and he had to do a deal basically that gave it away.
Right, and so to give viewers a little background, I mean, this is an iconic building in New York. You know, in a city of iconic buildings, I mean, this is one that people walk along or walk past on Fifth Avenue. There's retail in the bottom, and then it's notably, you know, it's a nice skyscraper and a name that, or an address that is memorable, we should say. They had big plans for it. At one point, they were talking about demolishing it and doubling it in size. And as you say, this was Jared Kushner's really ambitious project. It did not go the way that they thought it would. They were partnered with Vornado, and now to the rescue, and this to me is what's really notable, to the rescue and probably to the profit of its investors is Brookfield.
Yeah, Brookfield stepped into it and basically said, we'll take it for a 99-year lease.
Right.
And basically, we'll take over the debt and we're not going to pay anything.
And notably, they are paying this rent, they are paying a huge portion of the rent in advance.
Right.
So instead of paying it over 99 years.
Because the Kushners could use the money because they have like $1.2 billion in debt coming due in the next few months that they were going to have to pay.
What you said that it was who they partnered. What went wrong here? Is it a function of the industry? Is it a function of mismanagement?
It's somewhat all of the above. I mean, they bought it at a very high price. Yeah. They went way too ambitious in terms of their plans with it, and then they just couldn't manage the finances of it. And it'll be interesting to see what Brookfield does with it.
Well, that's right, because people who know this building say it's not that easy to renovate this building. For example, it has low ceilings, and you can't fix that very easily. So it will be interesting to see how Brookfield really redoes that building and makes it profitable.
And just as a reminder, Brookfield is one of the probably least appreciated and most powerful investment firms in the entire world. You know, we talk a lot about Blackstone. Brookfield is right there as a real estate manager. Bruce Flatt, the CEO, is incredibly powerful, incredibly influential, and little known.
President Trump's son-in-law has a 41-story size problem at 666 Fifth Avenue. Jared Kushner's company still holds half of the $1.2 billion mortgage and hasn't paid a cent, forcing the Kushners to look overseas for investors. Caleb Melby's recent story on the Bloomberg takes a deep dive into Kushner's struggles with the property. Caleb joins us now. Caleb, great stuff. Walk me through what's the new here.
Right. So we had known that Kushner companies had looked for funds with Ambang in China. They had gone to Qatar. This story reveals that they also talked to a developer in Saudi Arabia. They went to the Korean Sovereign Wealth Fund, talked to some Israeli banks and insurers as well, trying to find one of two things: either a way to refinance the mortgage on that tower, or in most cases to buy into this very expensive, very grand redevelopment plan they have for the building.
So what happened?
Nobody's committed any funds yet, and they're still looking.
How much time do they have?
The mortgage is due February 2019, and we got to talk to the president of Kushner Companies, Laurent Morali, and he'll tell you that that's plenty of time in real estate finance to find someone to do this deal with them. But they've also been looking for a long time already.
Any chance it's actually going to get done?
Anything's possible, and they tell you they have a lot of contingency plans. Either they create that 81-story building with condos that go at $9,000 per square foot and a huge retail mall, or maybe they just update the offices and get people to move in that way.
All right, Caleb, thanks very much. Bloomberg's Caleb Melby.
As far as settlements, I'd like to see you hold back on settlements for a little bit. We'll work something out, but I would like to see a deal be made. I think a deal will be made.
I would say that his stance is more clear than his predecessor. Went in with a pretty clear stated objective of what he wanted to do. He still wants Israel to refrain from building the settlements over there, and he wants to try and form a path to peace. And I think Trump is a deal maker, and I think that right now the setting in the region is ripe for making a deal.
I also feel that he doesn't need to be as transparent as maybe some people want him to be. I think that when it comes to Israel, it's certainly okay to do things and say things and work on things behind the scenes. As long as we know that he is in our corner, in Israel's corner, then I'm okay with that.
So I'm looking at two-state and one-state, and I like the one that both parties like. I'm very happy with the one that both parties like. I can live with either one.
The president did announce that he was willing to look in other forms for a two-state solution that wouldn't necessarily be the formula that we've been focusing on the past 10 years or so. And I do see great optimism in that because it's proven that the formula has failed. And one of those options that they have discussed a lot is a regional approach to how Israel is working with a lot of different allies, such as Jordan, Egypt, and Saudi Arabia. that we can form a regional approach with the Arab states to bring Israeli-Palestinian peace. And that could be a different option that I think the president will be able to make a deal with these other states and form peace in the end.
I'm a little afraid he's going to go a little too far and be a little bit too provocative. So I appreciate that he does support Israel, but I am concerned seem to be a lot of distractions at home and across the world in terms of his decisions and how they affect people. So I'd say the jury's out.
Okay. So this is the mold.
Okay, this is the original mold of the second Cyrus Trump temple coin. And as you can see over here, let's see what we have. Okay, first of all, we have over here in Hebrew, Lemalot 70 Shana, to fulfill 70 years. The original verse, to fulfill 70 years, is when the Jews went out to exile, to the Babylonian exile. They were there for 70 years. And after 70 years, King Cyrus said, God, the Lord of the world, gave me permission to let you, the Jews, come back to the land of Israel. And look what he said. And he charged me to build him a house in Jerusalem. That happened about 2,500 years ago. And now, 70 years for the state of Israel, something happened again. One of the biggest leaders of the world again, President Donald Trump, and here we see the seal of America. He again recognized Jerusalem as the capital of Israel, of the state of Israel, the people of Israel. And he also built a house in Jerusalem. But we don't want only the embassy. We hope, just as King Cyrus pushed us, the Jewish people, to rebuild the temple, we hope all the 70 nations and President Donald Trump, after he recognized Jerusalem as the spiritual, holy capital of the land of Israel, of the state of Israel, he will help us, the Jewish people, rebuild the third temple. And that's why we have the seal of America, the original Persian Empire.
Christianity and Islam and all the monotheism religious has a very, very important role to unify everybody, to worship the true living God, and to prosper and thrive according to God's will. It's so simple.
Do you think that the Vatican Pope Francis, he seems to have a similar message? Do you think that that Rome will go along with this too? Do you think this is...
No, I don't think so. In the U.S. there are 30,000 denominations of Christianities. So according to what we received, part of them will be part of the redemption, part of them no. It's very, very simple. So whomever will accept to be exactly as the nations, whomever will come as a person to come to be to worship God, he will be part of the redemption. As simple as that.
Just look around you. Look who's sitting here. And where are you from? Jamaica. And you're from the USA. And you're from
Argentina.
Argentina. And where are you from? Guatemala. Look at this. Look at this. And we have somebody from India. It's unbelievable. Here in the center of Jerusalem, I'm surrounded people from other nations, and we're all talking about one thing, of the importance of Jerusalem, and the importance of peace, and the importance of the Geulah of redemption. So we're part of a prophetic process. That's what it's all about. And this president, he understood when nobody else understood. He understood we're not talking politics. We're not talking politics. We're talking Torah. We're talking prophets. That's what it's all about. And once we understand it, and I think he understood it, maybe he can't say it, but he knows. And he's pushing us. He's pushing us and the whole world is there.
Can I ask,
where are you from?
England.
England, okay, so you have England also.
Can I ask, you said earlier that some of the temple is ready to be built in a prefab state. Is that true? Do you have part of the temple already built?
And it's exactly what we said before. It's not enough to pray for the temple. And if you pray for something, you have to believe. And to show that you believe something, you have to do. So that's why we have a lot of vessels made. We have a big altar that was made. We have programs, and yes, also some of the pieces of the temple, like this blocks itself, can be just transferred exactly like the model we see over here, 15 times bigger than this, and the temple can be built.
As Trump says, every nation will keep his language, his culture, his beliefs. It's not globalization.
Okay.
It's to walk one God on Temple Mount.
What is a Muslim? Let's talk. What is a Muslim? Muslim in the Hebrew world is perfect. Whomever talks to God is perfect. According to the Quran, Ibrahim was Muslim. Moses was Muslim. He was perfect, and they got into a conclusion that the Messiah will be their Mahdi. Their Mahdi. So whenever I meet Muslims in many countries, I tell them, who was Muslim according to the Quran? Abraham. I'm from Ibrahim. Moses, Musa. I'm from Musa. I'm Levi, and the Mashiach, Messiah, will be the Mahdi. So actually our history is the same, our future is the same, so what is the problem now? And they ask, really, what is the problem? I'm saying the problem is only the radicals, they're the terrorists. But whenever everybody will support building the third temple, then everybody will prosper, because this is what the temple is for the whole world.
So you think that there could be some union between all the religions as part of this?
Absolutely. We already have unity, but everybody's afraid from the terrorists. But okay, so this is our job, to unify everybody to worship the only true living God in the third temple with all the nations that will worship God.
Hashem will be a king, the one king, and will unite the whole world. So yes.
So you see that Jacob and Esau reuniting in the last days, so Muslims and Jews and Christians in the last days, so Muslims and Jews and Christians would be part of this one world, including some Kabbalistic and Eastern influences, all into one kind of religion in this temple. Is that?
I won't call it one kind of religion, and one kind of understanding.
Like a new way of thinking.
It's understanding that there is one God in heaven.
So it's kind of a new way, a higher consciousness, a higher way of thinking.
Exactly. And at the end of times, everybody will understand that Hashem Echad U'Shmo Echad.
Okay.
God is one.
Okay, so but this is a similar design to the third temple, and it's a very sort of kingly temple, isn't it? And I wanted to ask you, this lamp. So you've got the lamp, that would be the lamp of Queen Helena, who is a Persian. I mistakenly thought it was Constantine's mother, Helena, but this is a Persian Queen Helena.
She was very fond of the Jewish people, as she converted to Judaism herself, and the sages liked her very much. And when she wanted to donate something to the temple, so she made this candelabra made of gold. And when the sun used to rise from the east, it would hit the gold candelabra, and it would spread the light, like symbolically, but not only symbolically, from the temple.
So it reflects the sun.
It reflects the sun.
As it rises from the east, and this is what we're seeing in this picture over here, right? This is the sun reflection from the lamp of Queen Helena.
That's right.
And so we've got that kind of Persian thing again, and would it be right to say that there's some element of Kabbalah in this temple?
Well, Kabbalah is actually the inner part of the Torah. We have what the Torah tells us, and it's written in the Torah, And the Kabbalah is actually what isn't written, but we have to want to understand maybe about Little Persia and these all ancient nations, Eastern nations.
Religions.
So it's maybe religions.
So would you describe this as like a kind of a new world order, so to speak?
This is not an order. This is not order. It's different. It's the new world without any, let's say, negative and forbidden feelings, like hatred, like revenge. Like it will be only loving, appreciation, honoring. So this will be a new world, but not all order. It will be a new world, holistic, the holistic way, the way God wants it.
On here it says the Persian Empire. Do you think that this temple could somehow unite Islam, Muslim religion with Christianity and Judaism? Do you think that's...
So if we're talking about the Persian Empire, we know now that in Iran, which is where Persia is now, there's some different empire, but we're talking about the original Persian Empire. And yes, even in Iran, we have Iranians who are not Jewish, who want this coin because they understand that, yes, this is the place that will unite the whole world. And yes, the Jewish people have the power to unite the whole world. It's not us, not just Jewish people, but as long as we are talking the words of Hashem, that's what Hashem is. Hashem Echad, Shmo Echad. Hashem is the one which can unite everybody.
Messiah will be the judge.
You believe the Mashiach ben David is coming to
Mashiach
this
ben
temple?
David is very soon, and he is a Jew, and he is not Jesus. And if the Christians want to hold it, they can hold it.
And Mashiach ben David
is not Jesus, and if the Christians want to hold it, they can hold it.
And Mashiach ben David would potentially be the Messiah that would rule over this unity, this one world unity.
The first king we had that was a real king was King David, and we know that the king that will be eventually leading the world will also be from Yehuda, like you said, Mashiach ben David, or eventually the leader of the world will be a king, but not a political king, but a spiritual king that will help all of us understand together what we are supposed to be doing in this world.
Yeah, I mean, Jesus is described as the Lion of the tribe of Judah and the Son of David. Do you think that maybe Jesus, Yeshua, could be the true Messiah, and we might have maybe a counterfeit that could show up?
People will understand. It's like, I don't know, a small kid when you offer him chocolate, or an adult. If you offer money, nobody's going to say no to money, which is something very not spiritual. When we have the right understanding of what's important in the world, it'll be obvious to all of us that that's what we want. Everybody will be running after spirituality. So when that time comes, everybody will want it.
Okay, so we believe that the Antichrist will actually be the head of this deception before the real Mashiach comes. That's where we differ on our thinking at the moment. It says in the Temple Institute that there's going to be a Sanhedrin court.
Yes.
So they would make sort of judgments from the court in the temple. Is that?
There is a special place in the temple for the Sanhedrin. My temple will be the center of the prayer of the whole world. This is what Isaiah says. So we know this will be the future. So we are just marching it. I know it's like a mathematical formula. We're getting closer and closer. The last Sanhedrin war was 1600 years ago, and we had the right code how to re-establish it, because we knew that it has to be established. And all the rabbis agreed on one rabbi that he is like Moses. He can, and all the rabbis agreed on one rabbi that he is like Moses. He can ordained other people. He ordained 3, and the 3 of them ordained 71 at Tiberias. exactly the same place where the last Sanhedrin sat 600 years ago. So this is part of the process.